Good morning, Steve.
Hello, Prakash. How are you doing?
A team is already here too. Morning, Louise. Oh, well, afternoon, Louise. Morning, Tim.
Good morning.
All right. We got all time zones and folks from, I think right now, what? The Latin Americas, from the Americas. Yeah, okay. Europe, India is covered. And we'll have people joining in a couple of minutes, more of us. How's it been, Louise?
I'm good. I'm using the microphone of my laptop. Is it good enough?
It's good. Your voice is loud and clear. Morning, afternoon, Hamza. I'm not sure where you're from, but it's one of these morning or evening, I'm sure.
It's an evening
Hi,
time.
good
Yeah.
to see
Central
you.
Europe time. Yeah. Hi, Louise.
Hi, how are you, Hamza? Great to see you.
Yeah.
Glad you've joined us.
Yeah, great. It's good timing for today. The last time it was Saturday morning. Before it was Saturday morning for Central Europe time, right?
Well, we went out early Saturday morning for me when we spoke with Bree in Australia.
Yeah, I missed that one. I couldn't.
So hopefully a few more people would join us today. Whatever time suits people. You're very welcome, Tim. Oh, I think Tim's run away. We scared
No,
you
I'm
off,
still
Tim.
here. I'm just adjusting my lighting.
Scared you off.
That would be bad.
So we'll just wait to see as people start to join us. And Tim, I usually kick off pretty promptly as we come into 4 o'clock. Being a Saturday, our time is precious.
All right, to the people who have already joined in, to the folks who have already joined right now, our usual mode is we go to the gallery view as opposed to the speaker view. Yes, our speakers are fantastic, very good looking guys, typically all girls. They're amazing people. And
I'm the exception that proves the rule.
Oh, I think you're looking damn cool with your Jeff Bezos. You know what? I'll go with a better example. It's Star Trek, Captain Picard, Jean-Luc Picard, the best captain that ever could be, in all Star Trek. I mean, yeah.
Make it so, number one.
You bang on with the, well, we'll talk, I think, possibly about Star Trek at some point of time. For folks who are listening in, please go down to the gallery view. Apart from being able to see Tim, who is our speaker today, our guest of honor today, you'll also be able to see all of us out here. And what that does is, over a period of time, it helps us make new friends. So I can see Kathleen today, and morning, afternoon, Kathleen, and you'll be able to see new faces and make new friends, which is one of the important purpose of this club. And we will start in a couple of minutes. Louis is going to start as usual.
And if you could turn your video on, if you haven't yet, that would be great. I would love to actually make this a more personal conversation with everyone. So if you do have video, please turn it on. Thank you.
All right. You caught the vibe right on, Tim. That's how we always do it. We put on the videos on, and then we all go to the gallery mode. It becomes a close-up personal conversation with all of us, with the speakers. I see Jose also. Jose, good morning. Buenos dias. And, we'll become friends at some point of time very soon, I'm sure. It is the first time we're seeing each other. But I think I'll let Louis start the day today.
That's just some plugs.
Okay, we can hear someone chatting there in the background. So whilst you listen, we'd love to see you. But maybe you'll just put your mics on mute. So we'll kick off again. You are all very welcome to Behavioural Science Club. And today we have the honour of having with us Tim Ash. Tim Ash is an authority on evolutionary psychology and digital marketing. He's a keynote speaker. He's a marketing advisor and a best-selling author. And today we're talking about his new book, Unleash Your Primal Brain. Tim, you're very welcome. How are you, Tim?
Great. I've had my tea, English breakfast, in fact, appropriate, and I'm ready to go.
Very good. That's great. Well, as I say, you're very welcome. We met a few weeks back, Tim, and had a little get to know you chat ourselves. And during that time, I said to you how much I'd enjoyed reading your book.
Thank you.
Yourself, you call it a story of what makes us human.
Mm.
Want to elaborate a little bit on that description, Tim?
Sure. I tried to write something that describes the basic operating system for people. So it's a pretty ambitious book. And what makes us human, unless you believe that we just popped into existence and are superior to every form of life on the planet, is our evolution. And so my whole approach to describing what makes us human is to retrace the arc of evolution, what we picked up along the way from the earliest forms of life on Earth. That's shared with insects and reptiles and then mammals. And at the end, the last part of the book is about what makes us distinctly and bizarrely human and why we took over the whole planet like a plague of locusts. But I think to understand that, you have to understand the layering of everything that happened before. And I tried to write it in a non-scientific way and to just make it really engaging. But it's an ambitious book because it has really wide breadth and is accessible and has depth. So hopefully I pulled that balance off.
Yes, you're right, Tim. It is accessible. As you say, it's an extremely complicated subject, of course. The brain, it doesn't come much more complicated than that. But certainly the way that you've put it together is very accessible, and even like the approach of sort of highlighting what you consider to be key points in the text, which really kind of pull them out, and reinforcing that. What made you? Had you seen that approach somewhere before, or you knew it was effective?
No, I kind of invented the language as I went along. I've written a couple of other books. I'm known for my specialty in digital marketing, which is called conversion rate optimization or landing page optimization, basically making websites more effective and more persuasive. So I wrote a couple of best-selling books on it. So for the marketing practitioners, some of you may have seen this landing page optimization book. So I've authored 2 editions of that, and here you go, there's the Chinese version and the Russian one. I was born in Russia, but it's really weird to read a book that I never wrote in Russian too. German and so on. I could go on. Wow, Polish. Yeah. Anyway, so I wrote that book, and it was for practitioners, and it was kind of technical, covered a lot of stuff, had a lot of psychology in it. But this book was really written for every human being on Earth. And I wanted to be readable. I wanted it to be something that I could do as an audiobook, which is out, of course, that I narrated myself. I wanted it to be easy to translate because I had a feeling that this one's going to be translated in even more than 6 languages, like the last ones. So it had to be accessible. And I tried to, it's funny because you're talking about the call outs in the book. And if you can see on the pages, there are these little hands breaking through, my little caveman hands breaking through for key topics and key points. I tried to do that on the audio recording. And what I'd do is I'd be narrating along, and then I would say, this is a very important point, and I'd kind of get more intimate with the mic. People thought that I was just doing a shitty job recording the audio and splicing together different stuff that didn't fit. One guy said it took him about 2/3 of the way through the book before he figured out that those were the key call outs.
You get to realize.
Yeah.
And also we just touched on a subject that's particularly interesting to me in your book, Tim, which is I've Parkinson's disease, so I take levodopa, extra dopamine. Yeah. And we touched a little bit on the subject of that, about how it affects your behavior. So as a particular little kind of self-indulgence to me, maybe you'd tell us a little bit about dopamine.
Sure. Well, I want to hear a quick definition, like one sentence from a couple of you right now. So unmute and tell me, what's dopamine for?
Would anyone like
Anybody
to
want to volunteer?
There?
Don't worry. I'll tell you the right answer if you don't get it.
I don't know. I believe it's the rush that you get after you're doing something good. You feel good after eating, after achieving, scrolling down Facebook, seeing notifications.
Okay. So something you get after a goal, after achieving a goal. Okay, thanks, Hamza.
It's a rewarding hormone, or a happy.
It's a what?
It's a rewarding hormone.
Sorry.
Rewarding, Tim.
Rewarding.
Reward, yeah. So reward. Okay, yep. It's definitely tied to rewards. Okay. Anyone else? All right, well, I'll just.
We had a few on the chat there, Tim. People were
Oh,
saying
okay, sorry, I'm not looking at that.
happiness. Yeah, we've got happiness there as well.
Yep. Okay. So, unfortunately, when we talk about oxytocin or dopamine or endorphins, we kind of have this pop psychology version of them. But from an evolutionary standpoint, dopamine's a very old chemical. We share it with fruit flies. So it goes back several 100 million years. And basically what it is, it's one of its main functions is to meter energy. Should we expend energy in pursuing a goal? Most of the time, the answer is no, let's conserve energy. But sometimes you get this little bump, 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 keep walking and trying to get closer to achieving your goal. So it's energy control is the main point of dopamine. It does it in small little spurts so that you want to keep going. And Hamza, it's not after the reward, that's too late. It's to motivate you to get the reward, okay? But the other main function of it is it rewires your brain if you don't get what you expect. So basically, if you're going along, you have a mental model of how the world works, all of a sudden something wrong or unexpected happens. And there's literally kind of an oh shit circuit in your head that says, we got to adjust our mental model of the world. So basically, anytime your model's wrong, dopamine will also rewire and say, you need to pay attention to this and make a more accurate model of the world, okay? Now, since dopamine is also tied, like we said, to reward and risk-taking and energy expenditure, Louise, you're probably familiar with this, maybe even in your own life, that if you have artificially low or high levels of it, people will take on risk-taking behaviors, whether gambling or sex or drugs.
Sorry about that.
It's kind of like the thermostat for your activity.
Yes, so yeah, that's great, Tim. Thanks ever so much. And we were chatting because I'd said to Tim that if you take extra dopamine, you're particularly warned to be on the lookout for compulsive gambling behaviors or
compulsive sex
or
and compulsive anything, really.
Yeah, compulsive anything. So
yeah,
that was a very interesting chat with you, Tim. And also something that I particularly liked towards the end of your book is you very much focus on the importance for humans of acting together, the team. You say for mammals, life is a team sport, the importance of socialization. And obviously at the moment, that's more pertinent than ever. So maybe you just elaborate a little bit on that section, Tim.
Right. So if we look at basic animal and insect life on Earth, there's the kind of what I call the independent approach. Like you're a fish, you spawn hundreds of millions of eggs and hope some of them survive, and then you're off and swimming into the sea. Then after fish and reptiles, mammals came along, and what we added there was this ability to remember important information, to have affinities or aversions, and try to not repeat the same mistakes. So instead of all automatic responses, we try to optimize our chances of survival by remembering things and also by being herd animals. So we're individually weaker. Most mammals can't. That come to the water's edge will not survive the fight with the crocodile, okay? But they're smarter as a herd and they protect each other as a herd. But in human beings, we have an even more evolved tribalism, I guess you'd call it. We placed one big evolutionary bet on spreading culture. So if you think about other animals that occupy wide ranges, like say squirrels, there's 200 plus varieties of them. There's 10-gram squirrels, and then there's 6-kilogram squirrels. Some have bat-like wings to fly between trees. Others hibernate in the heat of the desert. So they made these huge physical adaptations. Human beings placed one big bet, and that was on spreading culture, that we could do better by learning the culture of our local tribe and their knowledge than we could ever learn in a lifetime on our own. And so that culture spread has made us be really, really weird biologically. So we evolved to spread culture. It wasn't just we have bigger brains and so we're smart. We actually have, our brains start out very unwired. They're not myelinated, which means you don't have fat insulation on your neurons. So compared to other animals, which start out with a lot of pre-wiring so they can function earlier. We have delayed adolescence. We try to put all the energy into brain building. And then in teenage years, I have a couple of those in the house, teenagers grow really fast and become sexually and physically mature. But you don't have to maintain the big body because you're focusing on the brain. And we're helpless, but we're not really helpless. We're actually paying attention to everything going on around us and drinking in that cultural package. I don't know how many of you have seen the Matrix movies?
Oh, yes.
The Matrix. Okay, so in the Matrix, this somebody needs this skill, and she says, "Download how to fly this helicopter," and then that cultural package downloads, and all of a sudden you know how. Well, it's kind of like that. We're really set up to optimize for our local environment, and we learn from the people around us.
I love that you said that, Tim, because I'm going to read something out that I particularly noted down. The notion that we are the masters of our life destiny, or the active choosers of our decision, is nothing more than a comforting illusion. And then in brackets, I've written to myself, makes me think of the Matrix.
Yeah, oh, that's funny. That's really funny.
So yeah, you definitely conjured up the I'll just say to the people listening now, I mean, the language of the book, when we start, it's, I don't know, it's just very dramatic. Your language is almost sort of a romantic, you know, we're getting ready and it's the build up and we're going on a journey. And, you know, I was really, I was really riled up. I was like, right, I'm with you, Tim. I'm ready for this. And
excellent.
You definitely drove kind of the excitement of then becoming like the journey of let's discover the brain. Yeah. I really like that. I felt that at the start, Tim, was your sort of true voice coming through before you then.
Well, that's more my speaking voice. Yeah, is more my speaking voice, because again, I intended to record the audio version from the very beginning with this one. But also, there's a whole chapter in the book about storytelling. And I've tried to sprinkle in little illustrative anecdotes and tie them to the ideas I'm talking about. And storytelling is a really powerful thing. Just right now, you know, when I say, if you just said, let me tell you a story about what I read, and you tied it back to the Matrix thing I said, right? We were all enraptured because storytelling has two important evolutionary functions. One of them is the fact that it's simulation. So I know how many of you have seen like the movie Sophie's Choice with Meryl Streep. It's like she's in a Nazi concentration camp. She has to literally decide which of her children is going to live and which one's going to die. I hope none of you ever have to face a choice like that, right? But by watching a movie or hearing a story about it, we can vicariously rehearse it and get the value of it without taking the personal risk or consequences. So stories like REM sleep are simulation and modeling the world without having to pay the price. But the other important part of storytelling is basically transmitting cultural values of your tribe to others. And none of us are individuals. We have this literally kind of trap door, one-way door, where outside influences come in and shape us all the time. So even the notion that we're individuals, for example, is something that was hijacked and snuck into your head if you live in the West, for example, whereas a lot of Asian cultures are much more communal, which is actually closer to our natural way of being. So stories also reinforce important values. And even the same objective story can mean different things depending on your cultural package. I'll give you a quick example from the book. If I describe a bullfight in Spain, so the matador deftly sidesteps the charging bull and plunges his sword between his shoulder blades and instantly killing it by piercing its heart, okay? So if you live in Spain and you like bullfighting, you're thinking about the impeccable warrior, the tradition, the honor of it, man taming nature and all of that. And then if you're in the US and you think about, you're in PETA, the people basically for ethical treatment of animals, you're thinking this is barbarism, this is animal torture, and somebody's paying money to watch it, right? And this should be stopped immediately. Same objective story, but based on the cultural package and lens through which you see it, you're going to interpret it very differently.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. That's great. Yeah, we're all very interested in, obviously, in context is king, I think is the phrase. So that's very interesting. So what I'm going to do now, thanks so much for that introduction about your book, Tim. I'm going to hand you over to Prakash now, who'll be asking a few more questions about the book. Prakash,
Fantastic.
can I hand over to you now?
Thank you, Louise. Tim, before we go to the question with Tim, for people who have already joined in, as usual, feel free to go to a gallery view out there so that you can see who else has joined and make new friends. Tim is a good-looking man, yes, but let him not be the only one hogging the entire screen for you. It's important for us to also make new friends out here. And we will talk with Tim very soon about 2-3 interesting things. But before we do that, as usual, most of us know, we are also very curious about what our authors were before they became this author, this writer on behavioral science. Is kind of a common question we always ask almost all of our speakers and our guests, saying, can you tell us a little bit about yourself? What was Tim doing like 15, 20 years back? Was he already interested in behavioral science? Was he starting a rock band? What was his story? What was he doing then?
All
And
right,
what happened
I'll
for
give
him?
you.
Yes.
Yeah, I'll give you a quick kind of rewind of my life. I was born in the former Soviet Union. My dad was ethnically Jewish. We got lucky when they cracked the door open in the early 70s and emigrated, got the hell out of there, and ended up in the U.S. So my little brother and I were, I was 8, he was 5, lived in different places in the U.S. And then I got a full academic scholarship to University of California, San Diego. So it was about 5,000 kilometers away from my parents. Had a nude beach next to it, and was one of the top science schools in the world. So that was an easy choice. I ended up there and I double majored in cognitive science and computer engineering because I couldn't finish my computer degree in 4 years anyway. So I figured, why not? Cognitive science was always an interest of mine. At the time it was in the psych department, but now is its own department. And I stayed there for graduate school. So I did my PhD work at UCSD and what's called neural networks, or these days deep learning or machine learning or AI. And back in the day, I was working on the algorithm side, how to make self-learning networks and that mimic some of the characteristics of the brain. What we didn't have were the huge data sets. And obviously with the advent of the internet, that's no longer a problem. So AI is really taking off right now because you have both the algorithms and the data to train them on. So I've always been interested in cognition, and UCSD was a very interdisciplinary, still is, very disciplinary campus. So on my PhD committee, I had a couple of guys from computer science, I had an economist, I had a linguist, I had a guy from electrical engineering, and we always went to graduate seminars at different departments across campus. So synthesizing information and about the brain and about thinking and cognition has always been at the root of what I do. And then I went into the professional world and for 20 plus years ran a digital marketing agency. And we worked with the Siemens and Expedias and Googles of the world on down. And most of the value that we created, which was about $1.2 billion in documented value, was due to durable neuromarketing principles. It's taking advantage of unconscious biases and things that are in our head. So I basically applied this to marketing and it works. But that was not my highest and best use on the planet. I didn't enjoy running a professional services firm. So I sold my share to some business partners and they're continuing to grow it, which is great. And I'm focusing on evangelism and keynote speaking. As you can tell from my badge wall, I've done a little bit of that. So just kind of enjoying doing that kind of teacher, mentor, advisor role. So is that, I don't know if that's too much detail or too little, but there it is.
This is the right amount of detail, Tim, for us to ask the next question, which is, your book is structured in a particular way. You have got parts like part 1, part 2, part 3, and then you've got chapters inside them.
Mm-hmm.
And for those who have not read the book, and yes, please keep your questions coming up, on different topics: Russia, computer science, behavioral economics, digital marketing. Team has all the answers. So please feel free to type them. So I read the preface of yours, and you said you could not find the answers you were seeking, which prompted you to write this book in a way, right?
Yes.
And the book is arranged in a particular way, which I interpreted it to mean the human genome, or what is human. Like if an alien species has to read and understand human beings, this is a perfect book to understand what is man, right? So would you be able to give us that short summary of how do you see a human being? What is a human?
Yeah, so again, the red thread through my book is evolution. That ties a lot of things together. My problem, and I'm sure you've encountered this as practitioners or interested in behavioral topics, there's behavioral economists, there's habit change people that want you to eat more vegetables, there's public policy people that want you to have less obesity or whatever. Everybody's taking their own approach to it. Neuroscientists, medical researchers, psychologists, and everybody's in their own little silo. And it's like the story of the blind men touching different parts of the elephant, right? Everyone says it's a different thing. And basically my goal is to say, here's the fucking elephant, okay? It's evolution. It evolved for a particular purpose so we could survive. And this is the path we took to get here. By the way, I apologize for swearing, too late now. But the idea is that this is what ties it all together. And I wanted to explain that in a way that was accessible. Now, some of you are a lot younger than I am, but back in the 80s, there's this guy named Carl Sagan. He was kind of like Neil deGrasse Tyson 1.0. And he had this wonderful book and TV series called Cosmos. And he'd say billions and billions of stars. So he was this really hardcore scientist, but he explained astrophysics and made it fun for everybody. And so I was trying to do the same with this book for the brain and for how human beings work. I want it to be accessible to everyone. So yeah, I use some Latin medical terms in there, but I don't expect you to remember them. And it's designed to be a straight read. So the book is arranged, like I said, to retrace the arc of evolution from earliest life on Earth to neurochemicals, what's learning, what's memory more generally, what do we share with reptiles and then mammals, and then our own. The last part of the book is about all of this uniquely human stuff layered on top of it. So my view of human beings is that we picked up stuff along the way, and if it still works, it's inside of us. And so but I start the book with what I call the lie of rationality. That's chapter 1. So all of us here right now are probably pretty proud of ourselves and think we're really smart. And that what makes us unique, and this has been going on in the West for thousands of years, at least since Socrates, is that our rational being should override these wild, untamed horses of our emotion. And that's our special gift. And everybody should be like Mr. Spock, just rational and logical. And I'm here to just blow that up and say, no, 95% of what we actually use to get by in the world is not even the conscious mind at all. It's the subverbal, unconscious, instantaneous, emotional, or fully reactive parts of the brain. They work. That's why they're there.
Well, thank you. And there was no need to apologize, Tim. I mean, the president of the leader of the free world can drop bombs, have bombs, and so can we. I mean, we learn from the best.
Well, that's not the best. Believe me, that's actually setting the bar pretty low. And when we get that orange cancer out of the White House, everybody will be better off.
All right, and there goes all the chances of our visas, guys. Everybody who's out here.
Anybody voting Republican, you can just drop off the call now. I'm okay.
Oh boy.
With that.
Oh no, don't drop off, guys. Democrats, Republicans, Libertarians.
Well, no, we have intelligent people in this group, so I doubt anybody would be. So we're good.
With us being on all sides of the political divide or discussion, I think a discussion like this, where you have Tim out here who can talk to us from multiple points of view about why we are the way we are. And that knowledge can help all of us, Republicans, Democrats, Libertarians, to talk with each other and find ways to bridge the gap.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to jump in here, and actually I'm going to take it in that political direction, not my own personal views, but I think an important part to understand. Earlier, I mentioned about culture and how important it is for us to maintain tribal cohesion. So one of the things that we do to spread culture is we have to be able to learn, figure out who to learn from, and transmit knowledge and mentor other people and pass knowledge around. So one of the things that we know that's operating in the political sphere right now is in times of uncertainty, people fall back on their cultural tribal knowledge. And they'll even override their own direct experience. So even if their eyes and their life experience is telling them that something is wrong, they'll still fall back on the cultural knowledge because it's so powerful from a survival standpoint. And so demagogues and autocrats and dictators use this. They create uncertainty and fear, and then they know the kind of cultural values that will be activated in certain people and certain tribes. And so this is a well-worn playbook that authoritarians use. There's a great little visual meme if you want to look it up somewhere, like the 14 signs of fascism. And it's just a playbook. You just apply it. But one of the things that we have to understand about these times is that the only way back from the brink is to de-escalate the fear. And that's when we start thinking for ourselves again. So that's my only hopeful thing I'm going to say today, probably about politics.
We can talk a little more hopefully about politics, and we'll talk about politics, but interesting side of it. It goes around the mention that you had around Spock. We talked about Star Trek. We didn't talk. We mentioned the word Star Trek sometime by the phrase. So from where you stand today with your own journey, when you were not, you probably do retain something of Soviet Russia. You were 8, you said, I think, when you left. You went down to US, and you got to be in one of the best places, and then you had a certain journey. Standing here, where do you see human race going in 100, 200 years from now? Are we going down towards a Star Trek kind of a society, option A, or are we going to devolve into a Mad Max kind of an universe? Given what you just talked about, demagogues and tribalism and that nature in human, where do you think we are more likely to head as a human species, a human race?
Wow. Okay. You asked. Okay. So I'm just going to remind you about that after I answer. You're making a huge assumption that we're even here 100 to 200 years from now. I'm personally not that sure. What we're doing is we're accelerating off of a cliff of global unsustainability. We're headed for the 6th largest global extinction event in the history of the planet. That's where we're headed. The question is how bad it's going to be. So whether it's, Mad Max at least had some gasoline left and there is still food growing various places. I'm not sure that's going to be the case. I'm going to feel in my lifetime, my children are really screwed. Beyond that, I can't even venture, what's around. So the problem is, as I see it again from an evolutionary standpoint, is that what we're passing around are these cultural memes. And one of them is that capitalism is good. And in fact, what's happening, the challenge of our times is the soft land capitalism. If we can't figure out some way to be sustainable, everybody doesn't get to live in a beautiful house and drive cars, and the level of consumption that we have, or eat animal meat. There's a great documentary on Netflix called Cowspiracy, if you haven't seen that, about the unsustainability of animal farming. I definitely recommend that. But the bottom line is that I think that we're going to just kind of drive off the cliff. I don't really see a way out of it. Also, another great documentary on Netflix right now called The Social Dilemma. If you haven't seen that, take a look. But think of it this way. All cultures are built around a set of common values. What happens when there are no common values? That's what's happening right now with social media. Before, in the pre-cable days in the US, we had 3 major channels: ABC, NBC, and CBS. Maybe PBS if you're more intelligent. Now we have 8 billion individual channels because social media is plucking and optimizing our own view of reality and what we respond to, what they can use to monetize us and make money off of us. So everyone's in an individual reality. And that doesn't bode well for societies holding together at any level. Democracy is based on things like inclusion, universal human rights, truth, science. So when those things don't operate anymore, you're seeing what we're seeing, and this tilt towards authoritarianism and people being following charismatic leaders. I mean, you see it in Hungary and Poland and Brazil and the US. I could go on. It's not a US problem, although we sure picked an idiot. But it's a social problem. So I don't have a lot of optimism about how to step back from this, because unless we rein in monopolies that are now touching every person on the planet, like Facebook and companies like that, or Amazon, we're all screwed. We're just letting them make money until we all die.
Oh boy. All right. I can see one
You
people
asked.
already worried with the answer you gave. And we'll just go one step further from here, a little deeper again from here, saying, in your book, you have touched about the need to be social, right?
Mm-hmm.
With us as a species. And was it easier in the past to have one shared reality or one common definition of what is true, what has transpired? And is it difficult in today's society? Is question number one. If so, what has contributed to this reality where we all are walking around with multiple versions of truth? In the question, yeah.
Yeah, so what we evolved for are small hunter-gatherer bands on the plains of East Africa. And Robin Dunbar, I'm sure most of you are familiar with his work, has basically said, among mammals, we're the most social. Our close group is about 100 to 200 individuals. Okay, so the famous Dunbar number of about 150, but it's really more like 100 to 200. And so we naturally can have personal relationships with that many people. And the whole point of the neocortex, the new part of the brain, is not the reasoning. It's not 2 + 2 = 4. It's not building microwave ovens or rockets. It's to model our place in the social tribe in real time. And it's more complex because we have larger social groups. But basically, it's kind of like, okay, if Louise invited me here and then there were a lot of Republicans and I made my Republican joke and that alienated a lot of people, and then they started posting on social media and it got back to her and it reflected poorly on her reputation of authors she picks. Okay, that's the kind of social modeling that we're constantly doing. And as soon as you stop thinking about computational things or planning tasks, your mind instantly, in a fraction of a second, goes back to social modeling. Okay, and so it's important to understand the purpose of that part of the brain. But I lost my train of thought. Can you just refresh my memory?
Yeah, so we were asking about this whole need to have one shared reality as a species.
Thank you.
And how we have possibly now got multiple realities, and what is the reason behind it?
Yeah, so when we were in those small groups, we basically had two tasks. One is survive in the group, and that's the usual mammal dominant stuff. The alpha males and females eat and have mating opportunities. Everybody else is on the periphery of the herd and has problems. So there's that kind of level. But again, because we're so highly cooperative, you can think of much of human evolution as competition between or among tribes. And again, the tribes that won are the ones that had the strongest social cohesion, the ones that could spread ideas the fastest in an unadulterated form. So they've shown this, for example, in social media, where fake news, real fake news, not Trump fake news, spreads 6 times faster than truth. It just somehow goes down easier because truth you have to think about. This is my own personal thing. So if I want to spread ideas and keep my tribal cohesion strong, and I tell you the world is flat, and you go, well, I don't know about that. I climbed up that really tall tree and I can kind of see the curvature of the mountain range on the horizon. Well, screw you. You're not spreading cultural knowledge in an unadulterated fashion fast enough. So you get ostracized. So groupthink is kind of encouraged. Groupthink is what allows ideas to spread quickly and without any changes. And so that's the problem with being in larger groups and amplifying it through social media and all of the news sources, I use that in air quotes, that we have now, is that we're no longer in the scale of things that we were designed for. And so there's all kinds of misfires that happen when we attach to the wrong tribes.
Tim, one quick question.
By the way, I used to be an optimist.
All right. This is 2020. We are allowed our dose of pessimism, and I think it goes with the year. One question here around social media. Actually, two quick questions, and then we'll open it up for all the questions. Please, guys, feel free to type in your questions on all topics that come up to your mind. It seems we have a mind which can take any question that you throw at him, right from behavioral science to Russia to politics to science fiction. So feel free to drop that.
Oh, by the way, the new Dune movie is coming out soon. I hope they make a good one this time. That's my favorite book of all time.
Fingers crossed out there. Also, Star Trek Discovery, guys. I think new episodes are coming up soon. I think this Friday or the next. It's a good one. It's decent. Okay, so two questions out here from my side. I'll wrap them together, then we can start taking up questions from everyone out here. Part A is, do we have too much technology for us to be able to handle other species? Number one. And number two, because your beliefs, your point of views kind of upset some of us out here saying, oh my God, is the world coming to an end? What would you tell us, right, people of this Behavioral Science Club who are here and all the 2,200 people who are gonna be checking out this recorded video and post about it in the next 1 week? What can these 2,200 people do to make sure the world and society doesn't collapse? One or two suggestions for us from you.
Okay, well, so I have a couple of short chapters to end the book, and one is how to be more primal on a personal level. And the final one is just kind of my wish for the world, if you will. So I do touch on this. There's a really interesting piece of sociological research that basically says if we look at our tribes as a kind of continuing or maybe concentric rings, there's you, there's your immediate family, there's your community, maybe your temple, your church, your synagogue, towns, nations, and the world. And then there's all living things in the world, the universe. You could have different spheres of concern, let's call it that way. And one of the things that they found is that conservative people have a more local sphere of concern. They care about more local stuff, whereas you'd call them progressives in the US care about more universal topics. So again, we can take the same reality, like this administration separates families that are seeking asylum from newborn children and puts those children in cages, okay? And to the conservatives in this country, it's, well, those are not people like me. Look, they're a different color. They don't speak my language. They don't worship my gods, okay? And therefore it has nothing to do with me. Whereas progressives go, this is inhumane, and this is universal human rights we're talking about. And if this was your child, how could you possibly do that, right? So they're on this continuum, but one's looking at it through a local prism and the other through a more universal prism. So one of my prescriptions at the end of the book is we have to attach to larger and larger tribes. All of our efforts as human beings and as professionals that are really not separate have to be in building the center, in building bridges, in getting uncomfortable and hearing other people's points of view, in traveling, which is the best antidote to ignorance that there is, and experiencing how other people in the world live their lives, and understanding underneath that the universal things that we all share are much more powerful than the things that divide us. So if there's any hope, I believe it's in that.
Thank you, Tim. So folks, I think the two things that we got to do is, number one, travel.
Great prescription for these days. I'd love to be an international keynote speaker during these times.
Travel around the world.
To be in front of 17,000 in Sao Paulo, Brazil in August. That didn't work out exactly.
So travel around the world. Thank you, team, for that. And guys, if you can make plans, go out to the Caribbean. There's Steve Audit, a certain gentleman, fantastic mind. In fact, he happens to be here with us. You can go out to the Caribbeans too if you can. People who are near out there, or just travel around. Number two is develop a sense of empathy for the people around us so that it can give us a larger sense of community. Kathleen has a fantastic comment out there talking about the circle of community that we feel, and the larger the sense, the better, I guess, it is for the world. With this, Louise, back to you for the Q&A, guys. feel free to
Okay.
type in all questions. I would like
Yeah,
to keep
and
on
again, I
talking.
would like to ask everyone to, if you have video, please turn it on. This makes it so much more personal for me instead of just seeing your names. So don't be shy. I don't care if your kitchen's dirty or wherever you're doing the call from. Just flip your video on, please.
Thanks very much, Prakash, and thanks, Tim. I'm feeling a W.B. Yeats moment coming on with things falling apart and the center cannot hold, and so getting very dramatic. So, Tim, what we do now is that we have been asking members to put their questions in the chat box as we went along. We've got a nice number of questions, and we're going to run through them right from the top. I usually ask people if they want to ask them themselves. So first of all, I can see there now Binit wanted to ask a question about digital marketing. Would you like to ask that yourself, Binit?
Sure. Hi, everyone. So it has been really a pleasure to be a part of this group. I'll just take another 5 seconds to talk about this. And there we have been seeing a lot of renowned people coming here and giving us talking about different topics. Now the question which I have for you, Tim, is that and it's a very rare combination that you know a lot about Primal Brain and then you know a lot about digital marketing. And the question which is that in particularly in digital marketing, how do we improve upon content? Is because that's the crux of it. So what are the things which we can pick from the book to improve upon the content, particularly in digital marketing, is the question.
Okay, well, so I'm going to answer two different questions in there. One is the book is kind of a chameleon. There are actually three audiences for this book. Since all I'm doing is describing the why behind evolutionary psychology, I don't apply it to anything. Originally, it was supposed to be a book about neuromarketing, and this was just part one. And then what I realized is that I need to write just separate applied books like Primal Brain Marketing, Primal Brain Leadership, Primal Brain Personal Development, all of that stuff. So by the way, I'm not in any hurry to write any more books. It's really painful. It took 2 years of my life for this one. So don't wait around for those books, but this book can be read by anyone in the business sphere, from leadership to persuasion to sales to things like that. The other audience would be for relationships, cultures, tribes, communities, intimate relationships, because I cover gender differences and other things in the book as well. And the final is personal development. If you want to understand yourself better and take yourself into account, it really is helpful with that. Memory, learning, neurochemicals, chasing rewards, happiness, all of that's in there too. So the book can be read or reread depending on which hat you want to put on. Okay, so there, believe me, I spent the last 25 years applying this to marketing, so you can definitely read it with that prism and you'll get a lot out of it. But just think very consciously and reread parts of it based on whatever perspective you want out of it. Okay. Now, having said that, I think from a content marketing standpoint, this is how I approach it personally. And in our agency work, we used to do content for conversion audits. So content that actually persuades people. The step one was identifying your audiences. And I know that sounds simple, but I mean, really narrow audiences, because a lot of companies say our stuff can be used by everyone on the planet. And congratulations, nobody will ever remember what you do. Okay. So you have to pick some tribes to focus on. The second thing is you have to understand their values. And that's really critical. And there's no substitute for that. Some bullshit personas or something like that isn't going to help you as a marketer. Go out and talk to people, and ideally in their native environment and their everyday context, and understand what matters to them. And only after that can you develop messaging that's appropriate and resonates for them. And you should create content that kind of matches the whole customer journey, if you will. Most of us in marketing suffer from what I call greedy marketer syndrome, which means we want to squeeze the bottom of the sales funnel and hope money comes out, right? But what we should be doing is helping people much earlier in the funnel, even when we can't make money off of them. But that will build loyalty. And it also kicks in another important evolutionary principle, which is reciprocity. If you give someone a useful gift, if it's just information or a video or a download, then they feel obligated to return it actually more powerfully. They give you something back that's worth more. So those are just some thoughts on content marketing.
Thank you so
That's
much.
great.
Thanks, Tim.
Thanks, Binit, for that great question, and thanks for the great answer, Tim. I sent you a present actually in an email. So
I saw that, a personalized playlist from my early days in the US. It was great. By the way, Average White Band, Pick Up the Pieces. Write it down right now. Average White Band, Pick Up the Pieces. It's an instrumental song. Rocks. 70s were the best for rock and roll.
I'm glad you got that before we met, Tim. So you're feeling sort of like, oh, I've got to be kind to Louise now because she sent me something.
Not necessarily.
So now the next question I'm going on to is from Rachel. Would you like to ask the question yourself, Rachel, about applying practical examples?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it may be quite similar question to the one just asked, but I wondered if you had a really practical example of how you'd applied this thinking in the agency when you were in that situation, like to a specific case study or a client that you could maybe
we use this all the time. So one of the things in terms of offers is limiting the amount of choice. We have very small capacity for short-term memory. So having more than 4 choices, really stupid. Having non-obvious computational kind of distinctions. How many of you have seen a product or plans page that has a matrix literally of here's how plan A, B, and C works. Here's all the features of each. You get 200 terabytes with our enterprise plan, this kind of bullshit. That's not making it easy for me. So the brain likes obvious black and white choices. Those are handled in an automatic fashion as opposed to, like, I'll give you an example of people would say, well, our monthly plan is $10 a month, but our annual plan is $100. And Mr. Spock's supposed to do the math. Well, that's really stupid. You know, you should normalize it for me and say, save $20 a year. And that's a black and white choice. If you're making me do math, that's not black and white. So simplifying the offer in terms of the number of choices you give me and pulling out the differences between them. Don't put all those rows in the matrix that are the same for each plan, for example. Only highlight the differences and amplify those so they're really obvious. I mean, there's many principles, like I said in the book, that can apply to marketing. That's just one.
Thanks so much. Brilliant advice we're all getting here, Tim. I hope everyone's scribbling everything down furiously. I've got a feeling I'm going to be rewatching this afterwards and taking a few notes.
By the way,
Tim,
I'll make this offer right now. I know you normally end on the hour, but I'm good going past. So if the conversation's rolling and people are still interested in staying on, I'll stay on.
That's really kind, Tim. Thanks a lot. So I'm going to ask Cheyenne if he'd like to talk with you now. He's interested as well about other things that might have inspired you. Would you like to have a chat, Cheyenne?
Yeah, sure. I was just wondering, Tim, first of all, thank you for all the F-bombs. This is my favorite session ever. I was wondering the way you express and the way I have to admit I haven't read the book, but I will do.
It's okay.
I'm reminded a lot of Desmond Morris's work, The Naked Ape and the Human.
Yes.
I was wondering if Desmond Morris was an inspiration in any way.
Yes, definitely he is an inspiration. That's kind of an early evolutionary psychology take. Dawkins is another one. The Selfish Gene was a huge inspiration to me. There's a lot of stuff that goes back. In the book and also on the website, I have, like I said, I don't do endnotes or footnotes. I respect you guys too much to do that. But there is a reading list of about 30 books that I reread. And these are all on the website, primalbrain.com as well. So you can get a kind of a sampling of the book length stuff that I read. I also read a lot of, scientific papers and journal articles and watched videos. And this is really about 10 years of thinking about what I wanted to say before I even sat down to write the book. But yeah, absolutely. The Naked Ape is a classic.
Thanks, Cheyenne. That's great. He also commented, Tim, that he thought earlier on we all needed a little boost of dopamine to lift the spirits. So thanks, Cheyenne.
Well, actually, before we go to the next question, if I may, You know, one of the things I talk about in the book is the cycle of addiction, and how by escalating any activity, you're just going to make things worse and eventually bring on unhappy chemicals in your quest for happy chemicals. There's no such thing as permanent happiness. Well, some of you may argue, some of you are from India, which has a very deep tradition of, I'm not a perfected,
even with a few of these, Tim.
Well, even with a few of those, but I'm not a bodhisattva. I haven't achieved nirvana yet. And, you know, but one observation is that the only non-addictive form of happiness is gratitude, is what I found. If you recapitulate good things that happen, if you, oh, that was great, or I'm really grateful for, a lot of religious people kind of put people into their thoughts at night before they go to bed. So a recapitulation of good things and kind of numbering all the stuff that's happening to you and all the good things, that's a non-habit forming way to maintain and amplify happiness. So that's one thing I'll say on that.
That's lovely, Tim. I think that's really a lovely philosophical thought that's definitely sort of elevated the feeling of being human.
Yeah, well, I didn't want you all to get depressed and, you know.
Kathleen, I don't know if you want to chat a little bit about, you were mentioning about sort of how we sort of have evolved on and then how we are now. So do you want to bring in your question, Kathleen? You're on mute, Kathleen.
We go. Okay, so I'm an evolutionary biologist, so I find books like this.
I just play one on TV, so you know.
And what I was pointing out, I mean, I agree with. I haven't been able to get the book yet, so I was going to read it, but I haven't been able to get the book yet. I agree with a lot of what you've been saying. I would say that a lot of our problems are because we are no longer foragers, and we can't be foragers. The few foraging groups that are still in existence are so terribly threatened. I mean, they should be on the endangered species list almost. I mean,
they are, yeah. As cultural groups. Yeah.
But that is our psychology, in my opinion. That's our psychology. Absolutely. Is designed for being in forager groups, and they are generally 25, 50 people on average, and so that they fall below the
Dunbar number.
The Dunbar number, yeah, that was a good book though. I did like this book, but they fall below that. They do meet up with larger groups because you have to exchange mates or whatever, so they can do that. We are trying to, and we have been for the past, let's say, 8,000 years in most places, we have been trying to live in a way we really are not adapted for. And you can see how we have managed to screw things up.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, agreed.
Yeah, go on. I'm sorry. It's your,
yeah, so I think you're absolutely right. As soon as we get agriculture and we can sustain larger populations, they live in the same places. You know, I think Rome during the Empire days was well over 1 million. The same with Mexico City. Even 500 years ago, pre-Columbian, they had over 1 million people in Mexico City. You know, so it's not new, but it's definitely due to agriculture. And a lot of times these larger groups misfire. For example, how many of you follow celebrities of various kinds, whether they're political or in the arts or just famous for being famous, like the Kardashians, right? Well, when you're in that small tribal group, it makes sense to understand all of the relationship dynamics, like I said, because there's a payoff to that. You get the most benefit with the least amount of harm by understanding everyone's place in the tribe. When we just say, oh, well, what about Beyonce? And we start gossiping about Beyonce, that's taking that small tribal gossip, which is the glue that held us together, and transferring it inappropriately to a total stranger. We have no way of influencing our interactions with Beyonce and no benefit from that at all, but it's that evolutionary stuff misfiring because we think of high visibility celebrities as being part of our tribe. So that's just one example of how we take the stuff for small group survival and it misfires in larger populations.
Thanks so much, Tim. Thanks for that question, Kathleen. That's great. There's a question now from Harmony. Would you like to unmute yourself, Harmony, and have a chat with Tim?
Hello.
Thanks, Harmony.
Hi. Yeah, just I think we mentioned social dilemma last week too, didn't we? It seems like it's been coming up a lot. I know for me, I sort of had been following this whole idea of surveillance capitalism and had watched some YouTube videos, pretty chilling stuff. One thing, I'm interested in digital marketing. I mean, I'm interested in a lot of things that I don't do, but I really am fascinated by the fact that it seems as though if it's not on Facebook or maybe LinkedIn or just a few platforms, that basically your message is not going to get out there. So yeah, I'm just curious to know what your opinion about that is, since you are in that field of digital marketing. Sort of seems like it's just a really scary sort of trend. It seems that if you wanted to advertise, if you're not on these, sort of half dozen platforms, you can kind of forget it.
Yeah, that's true. I think that, again, the biggest issue of society is there used to be strong counterweights. There used to be unions, political parties, again, other things still exist in some cases, like in Germany, where on corporate boards you have union representation. That would be unthinkable in the US, for example. But there are no more counterweights. And there used to be antitrust enforcement. And now we have companies like Amazon and Facebook that are monopolistic and just using that market power, and nobody's enforcing the rules. And they really need to be broken up. And if they don't, that's, like I said, basically the end of democracy as far as I'm concerned. There's no way we can survive their ongoing dominance.
Thanks very much, Harmony. Thanks, Tim.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks so much. And yeah, I just want to refer back to the end of the book, Tim, which I mean, is quite uplifting, really. I mean, I really loved the bit at the end where you put the personal challenge to us. I'm just going to read a bit from quite near the end of the book, which is that you say, look instead for the universalists, a relentless commitment to seeing the perspective of different others will stretch and challenge you, but it will also open your heart and produce connection and understanding. And I think that's what you've been talking about, Tim, the importance of what we all want everyone to do, to consider everybody's viewpoint, and the fear that what we're seeing is just one narrow window of perspective. So what made you decide to wrap the book up on that particular point, Tim? It's obviously something that's important to you.
Well, the book itself is neutral, as like it or not. My opinions, again, don't come out of any kind of cultural beliefs. They're coming from the basic biology of our evolution. So, and then it's just a matter of straight line extrapolating it from here, and the prognosis is not good. But I do believe that we're greater than the sum of the parts. I don't think that human beings can be reduced to any single perspective, including evolutionary psychology. But I think that the prescriptions are correct. It's just the most effective medicine is often the hardest to take. So I'm not sure we will take it, but I encourage all of you, like I said, to stop thinking about your professional sphere versus your personal sphere. There's no such thing. You're a human being. You're a steward of this planet, and we all have to start thinking from that place.
Thanks so much, Tim. That's brilliant. I'm going to hand back to Prakash now. Thanks, Prakash. Thanks, Tim.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Louise. Thank you, Tim. This was a fantastic session. For folks who have not yet bought the book, not have read the book, please do. It's not compulsory. Yeah. I mean, it's not a school anymore, but the book is fantastic. It is it's almost a mental model, if you can use that word, of what it means to be human. It talks about it from multiple perspectives. And you have seen Tim's point of view. He says no one science or no one theory is enough to explain what it means to be human. Which is why, like we spoke in the beginning, there are multiple ways the book talks about what is human. And so please do check out the book. It's fantastic. And if we have more questions, Tim is there on LinkedIn. He's pretty active on LinkedIn. He's on Twitter too. We'll share those links both in the group soon. So feel free to reach out to him, connect with him, ask your questions if they occur to you later. And before we leave for today, 2020 is coming to an end. Overall, it has been a sucky year for the world in general. And we all have been wondering, how do we make sure this year doesn't suck as much? And we are all in the Behavioral Science Club, which means we have to find a way of using behavioral science to make this year less sucky. So one way we are doing that is we read fantastic books, and some of the fantastic authors says, you know what, I will speak with you guys. And they come over there and we get lucky, like Tim did, and the universe is kind to us that way. So we will do that. The second way we will do this, I think, is we're gonna end 2020 on our terms. Enough of all this nonsense that's happened to us. And one of the easiest way of ending something on our terms is to make a change happen in our lives. So one thing which we want to do as Behavioral Science Club members is look at something that we have wanted to do for quite some time in our life, but we never got around to do it. It could be something as simple as, I want to learn how to code. It could be something as simple as, I want to learn to play the guitar. I want to write 2 poems. I want to write my first story. I want to finish that particular course on finance. I want to understand what the hell is economics. It could be anything, right? I want to run my first 5 kilometers. I want to lose 5 kg or 10 pounds of weight. All of these are possible in exactly 80 days. And we have 80 days before the year is gonna end. The question is, do we want to do it? And by now we have understood enough of behavioral science to say we cannot rely on motivation for that, right? That's what our previous books, previous teachers have taught us. So we will find a way of doing that. We'll find a way of bringing that into your life. There are going to be lessons we'll pick up even from Tim's book, Unleashing the Primal Brain, about how can we do that. But be ready for it, guys. We are going to do this together. 80 days, 60 days are enough to bring the change in life. And it makes sense to end this year on our terms instead of feeling like, that was one weird year. Let's make it a year that counts for all of us. Tim, so much grateful for you being here early morning out there and talking to us.
Yeah, no, so I just want to end on a couple of things real quick. So if you want to reach out to me, I'm very sociable. If you're interested in the digital marketing or the speaking or advisory stuff, timash.com. That's real easy. The book and all information, including the table of contents and the introduction and the recommended reading list from the book, the other 30 books that I reread, is at primalbrain.com. So please check that out. But feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn, please. That's also on my contacts at timash.com. I'll be glad to continue the conversation. The ebook is out. The audiobook narrated by me is out. And now you know to listen for those call outs as different voice on the audio. And the print books, if you're in Australia or New Zealand, the Booktopia edition is out. The US one, actually, this book won't be out till April, widely available. So the only way to get this right now is on my website, an autographed copy. And if you tell me you came from this club, I'll write something special in it. So that's the only way to get the pre-release paperbacks at this point, okay? And then my final thought about what you should be doing with those final 80 days, get your sleep right. That's the most foundational thing you can do for your well-being. If you're not getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep, you're literally killing yourself. So that's my vote for habits to change.
Fantastic. So travel around the world, learn to empathize, get your sleep right. I think we're going to remember these three things that you said, Tim. It was wonderful having you out here, everyone out here. Good night, good evening, good day. Stay safe, wear your masks, go out and vote if you have to, whichever party you want to. And we'll see you soon. next week. Take care.
Yeah. Thank you to all you beautiful people.
Thanks so much for coming. Brilliant to see you all again. Thanks, Tim. Thanks, Prakash. Thanks, everybody.